You're watching the video on dividing fractions by whole numbers. In the previous video, we talked about multiplying fractions, and now we're going to talk about dividing fractions. So, one sec, there we go. How do we multiply fractions by whole numbers? Right? As a review, how do we multiply fractions by whole numbers? Well, what we have to do, right, is just multiply the tops. And as I mentioned in the previous lesson, if you have a whole number, you can quickly turn that into a fraction because we already know how to multiply fractions, right? If you have 1 over 2 times, let's say, 2 over 3, you don't care that the denominators are different. You don't care that the numerators are different. You just multiply the numbers. 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 3 is 6. And then you could simplify into 1/3, right? So at the end of the day, when you multiply fractions, you're just multiplying the tops and bottoms respectively. Well, when you're multiplying by whole numbers, you're like, where's my bottom? Where's my top? Well, you have 2 over 8. There's your bottom and top. Well, with 7, you can just put a 1. 7 over 1. Remember, fractions are the same as division. So 7 divided by 1 is 7. So this is the same thing as 7. You can say that. So you can just put a 1 underneath, and now you have your fraction. 2 times 7, 8 times 1, right? 2 times 7 equals 14. 8 times 1 is 8. Right, now 14 over 8. Oh, numerator's too big. What do I need to do? Well, I need to see how many 8s fit into my top. Well, 1 does, so what's left is my new numerator. That's my denominator, and I have a 1 there. Then I can simplify. I can divide this by 2 and this by 2. And so my answer will be 1/3/4. So again, what you got to do is just multiply the whole number by the top. That's the shortcut. But if you want to know why, the reason why this works is because 7 as a whole number is the same as saying 7 over 1, or having 2 or 3 or 4 is the same as saying that number over 1, and you just multiply through. Then what you need to keep in mind is the fact that if you end up with an improper fraction, you need to turn it into a mixed number. And then if you can simplify the fraction, you want to do that. And so the hard part of this isn't so much the multiplying, it's the fixing. It's those little details that you got to put in there. So don't forget to mix your fractions, don't forget to simplify. Okay, well then, what do we do when we divide? What do we do when we divide by whole numbers? Well, when we multiplied, the shortcut was we just multiplied the tops. Well, in this case, you multiply the bottoms. So here we have 2 over 8 divided by 7. Now I'm not going to turn it into a fraction because that might be a little confusing, but just like when we multiplied whole numbers by fractions, when we multiplied whole numbers by fractions, you multiplied the top. Well, in this case, you're multiplying the bottom, right? So you multiply the denominator by the whole number. Multiply the denominator by the whole number. So instead of multiplying the top, you're multiplying the bottom. So 7 times 8, right, is 56. So now you have 2 over 56. Can I simplify that? Yes, I can. And so that becomes my answer. And so at the end of the day, multiplying and dividing fractions by whole numbers, not really that different. You just need to be careful. Oh, I'm multiplying by a whole number. I multiply the top. Oh, I'm dividing by a whole number. I multiply the bottom. You're not even dividing at this point. And that's how you divide fractions by whole numbers. So why does this work? So remember, a fraction is just division. So 2 over 8 is the same as, right, 2 divided by 8. So then 2 divided by 8 is the same as saying 2 divided by 8 divided by 7. And if you're dividing 2 times like that, you can just multiply them. Right? So you're dividing once, and then again, it's the same as just dividing by 8 times 7. Right? It's the same as multiplying 8 times 7 and dividing by that. So that's basically why that trick works. So the shortcut for dividing fractions by whole numbers is you take the whole number and multiply the denominator. The shortcut for multiplying fractions and whole numbers is taking the whole number and multiplying it by the numerator. So try these practices on your own. This is a relatively short lesson because the concept's easy. The trick comes in making mixed numbers and simplifying your fractions. That's where you're going to lose your marks. That's where you're going to get hit the most because you're forgetting those key steps. So just keep that in mind as you're practicing. If you need a bit more practice, these questions are really good to really hammer in the dividing by fractions aspect, or dividing by whole numbers and fractions. In addition, it'll again encourage you to make sure you mix your numbers if your numerator is too big. It'll encourage you to simplify your fractions. All right, so hopefully you found that useful, and I'll see you next lesson.